So, for our second podcast over natural selection, we'll talk a little bit Charles Darwin. He is known as the father of natural selection. So, if we ask you that, just know that he's known as the father of natural selection. So, we had talked a little bit about Lyell with his geology and saying that things on Earth, geology, um, changed gradually over time, and that was gradualism. And so, in um, the 1800s, Charles Darwin went to South America on a ship known as the Beagle. And he traveled with a friend who was a sea captain. And the sea captain wanted company on the Beagle. And so he asked Darwin to go along. Darwin, of course, was a naturalist, was very keen to go on. Unfortunately, Darwin was very seasick, and so a lot of the times he, if able to, in South America, would walk from port to port on land. And during his walks, he was able to collect a lot of different specimens and see a lot of animals, a lot of fauna or flora, plants and animals that he had not seen previously in England. So, um, he was years on the Beagle. I believe it was a 5 year trip, but I can't remember for sure. So, if you can look down below, here is his journey out. Let me get off of that. There's his journey out and his journey home. And right here is where the Galapagos Islands were. Galapagos Islands had been known for years to sailors. And one of the things, and if you watch the video, you would see, hopefully, you're in the process of watching it, you would see that you have a lot of tortoises. They don't move very much. They can stay for months without food or water. And so sailors knew this and they would collect these tortoises and put them in the bottom of the ship, and that would be their food source. And so partly they were there to get some food. And then Darwin was able to study these animals and these plants that he had never seen before. So he has Lyell's book on geology with him. He's collecting specimens as he travels around South America. And he's able to witness a earthquake in Chile at that point. And so right here obviously is South America. Here's the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands are off of Ecuador. The Ecuadorian government is the one that is responsible for taking care of them. So here's he starting, goes around. Here's the Galapagos. Then they're going to be on their way home, as you can see. So the earthquake in Chile devastated the city, obviously. But he also noted, remember, he's on a ship, that it affected a lot of marine life. And here you can just kind of read that given time, he believed these mussel shells, they look a lot like little clams, would fossilize. Darwin ascended part of the Andes and confirmed that indeed fossils of ancient marine shellfish were present. So he knew that the Earth has to be millions of years old, if not older. So here's the Andes. Here's some fossilized shells. The last stop was the Galapagos, and it's a series of volcanic islands near Ecuador. I said it was west of Ecuador. Um, Humans have not lived there, so they had not populated there. Hawaiian Islands were also a series a series of volcanic islands. The difference between the Galapagos and Hawaii is humans got there first, much earlier, and so you don't see the diversity that Galapagos has been left alone. And so you see much more diversity there. One of the things, and I think it was mentioned in your video, was how tame the animals are. Of course they are. They don't know humans. And that made them very vulnerable to people that would hunt them and use them for food or for trophies. Darwin collected a, uh, a series of specimens. The most famous things that he collected were the finches, and this is what brought him with his speciation and his natural selection theory. So here's 3 different finches. They're on different types of islands. I want you to understand that these Galapagos Islands, if you've ever been to the Hawaiian or read anything about Hawaii, each island is diverse in its flora and fauna. And so that's the same thing with these Galapagos. They were formed at different times through volcanic activity or the hotspot volcanoes. And so therefore, you are getting different vegetation, different flora, different fauna. That leads to some of these finches having different adaptations that are working for them in this type of environment. So you have the cactus finch, large ground finch that'll eat bugs off the ground, and then the green warbler finch that's more within the trees and looks like with this beak it could probably pick ants and things like that. So the big thing, I would probably highlight this, the big thing was the fact that it was each species of finch mainly different in the size and shape of their beaks. So they were adapted for different food sources, crushing seeds, picking out insects, eating cactus flowers, and so on. So like this one, like I said, would be eating the insects. This one here is like crushing seeds. This one is getting cactus flowers. So I would highlight what adaptive radiation is. This is where a species rapidly diversifies into a new form. So like you have the original species, and then now you've got all of these adaptations coming out. And the big thing, they're different, is the fact of their beaks. That's why they're different. So this encounters a new or changed ecosystem. So the ecosystem is different. And as they landed on these different islands, the variation that was the best for that particular island for food source is the one that rose to the top and survived. So you have new niches, and I would highlight this. This is our space or role that organisms play, and you want to occupy a niche that nobody else occupies. If 2 species are occupying the same niche, you're going to have competition arising, and one will win and one will lose. The loser will either die out or have to move on or find another niche. And that's what they theorize with the sea iguanas, the marine iguanas. Found a niche that was able to eat in the sea so that the land iguanas, they are not competing with the land iguanas. When Darwin went home, he studied these finches, and he also looked around him and studied artificial selection. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Farmers, breeders will take desirable traits and breed plants or animals for those certain desirable traits. So, example is dog breeding. You have hundreds, if not thousands, of different breeds of dogs. Why? Artificial selection. Each dog has originated from the gray wolf, and in fact, it is argued, It has been argued recently that the gray wolf and the dog are really one species. Right now, they're still linked as two. They are still two separate species. Canis lupus is the wolf. Canis familiaris is the dog. But if you were to put your dog's DNA and the wolf's DNA together, you would not be able to tell them apart. But anyway, dog breeds, you have hundreds of different dog breeds, and they are bred for traits such as size, coloration, temperament, and so this is artificial selection. It also applies to plants like cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and a lot of other vegetables are derived from the same plant, wild mustard. And so, like kale, selection for the leaves, broccoli for the stems and the flowers, cauliflower for the flower clusters, um, cabbage for the buds, and here's Brussels sprouts, the lateral buds. And so, yes, so artificial selection happens often. So Darwin felt that that artificial selection process was happening in nature. And traits that were favorable were the ones that were able to survive and reproduce. So he called this theory, not artificial selection, natural selection. And he based his ideas on series of observations and inferences. And the first observation is that offspring are capable of producing more offspring, or species are capable of producing more offspring than the environment can support. I need you to highlight this and highlight what this term is called. Superfundity. So you get this level of reproduction that super means above. So above the level of support. This will be all for today. Next week, seems like as though we are doing e-learning again next week. Count on you will have your test the 23rd and 24th through probably Google Classroom. Teachers are getting together, keeping 5 feet apart, but at least being able to talk. And we will be putting your test into Google Classroom, and then I am now finding different labs that we can do over the internet. And so look for Friday, Saturday, or Sunday at some point, one of those days. I'm hoping it is Friday evening that we were able to put out the following week's work and expectation. Have a nice day. And I will be addressing people that miss quizzes and all of that. I need to go through the grade book and look at that as well. So I will, hopefully today's Wednesday. I hopefully will be able to get that looked at today or tomorrow. So have a nice day.